Are you ready? Let's go. Ready?
Ready.
Yeah, ready when you are.
Okay, you ready?
Yeah.
Okay, you ready?
I'm ready.
Holden Shepherd, Heidi Anderson, Jan Latta, Alison Patterson, welcome to my little show.
Why do you call it a little chat show?
Jan Nichols, Sam Eichen, Annabelle Smith, Donna Mazza, Rebecca Watson, Jonelle Fraser, Tracy Jacobson, Adam Wallace, Monique Mulligan, Matt Glover, Karen Young. I don't even know where I'm going with this. Welcome to my show. Now, before we meet our guest, Inspiring Kids Home Edition is now available. Now, this is the Inspiring Kids course that I've designed specifically for kids with autism, with ADHD, dyslexia, learning difficulties, anxiety, disability. It's designed for these kids to feel okay about who they are. This is that big self-acceptance thing that is so important, because there's nothing out there that kids can watch, like a program or anything like that, that says directly, hey, you are amazing just the way you are. You are fantastic and you are an amazing human being. That's what this program does. Plus, that's module 1, module 2, 3, and 4 goes through emotional regulation, so to manage those big emotions like anxiety or anger, and talk about encouraging empathy, resilience, and obviously creativity. So, Inspiring Kids Home Edition is now available, and I'm realizing even in homeschooling communities, there's a big gap, because you can call it the social and emotional learning for homeschooling communities. It is now available. So just go to my website down here and take a look around, and this will be, I think, play a big role and make a big difference to the lives of many, many, many kids. Okay, let's get to meet our next guest. Now, you are going to meet Maria Pappas, and she's a writer and a teacher. And this is her debut novel, Skimming Stones, which won the City of Fremantle Hungerford Award last year. And this is out through Fremantle Press. We've just had an amazing conversation about this book. I'm not going to tell you too much because I want you to watch the interview, but it gets deep, it gets personal, and we really explore places of the heart. This is not a book just about, let's just get entertained. This is a book that's going to pull at your heartstrings and is going to make you a better person when you finish reading it. And hopefully, after this interview with Maria Pappas, you're going to be a better person too. So pour a cup of coffee, glass of wine, whatever it is, and let's get to know Maria Pappas. Maria Pappas, thank you so much for coming on my show. How are you?
I'm well, thank you for having me.
Look, absolute pleasure. Look, congratulations, Skimming Stones out through Fremantle Press. How does it feel that the book is actually out now? Because I know it takes a long time because this won the Hungerford last year, and it takes a long time to actually get out into the world. How does it feel?
It didn't feel real, actually. So writing it felt real, publishing it or getting it published felt real. But then when it was out in the world and suddenly it was going to be in bookstores and all of that sort of stuff, that did not feel real until just today, actually, when some people who had read it sent me emails or told me what they were thinking as they were reading it. And then I thought, actually, I've made a connection maybe. And now it's starting to feel real. So it's a very strange and feeling.
I've heard it being described as like your book baby is yours all the way until it gets released, and then it's everyone else's.
And then it's someone else's.
Yeah. And then they will interpret
and everybody
it.
Everybody has different interpretations and different questions, different things that they connect to. And sometimes they're things that I wasn't expecting that people would connect to, yet that is the interpretations that happen. And then I realized that this isn't my book so much anymore. What I've done with it has finished, and now it's the reader's book, I hope.
Yeah, and I think that's the beautiful thing about it. So before we go any further, can you just give us a brief thumbnail sketch of what Skimming Stones is about?
Yeah, okay. So I've set Skimming Stones basically in a paediatric oncology ward, and also down south in Western Australia at Lake Clifton. And it's, in general, if I can give you a thumbnail, it's about a nurse. Her name is Grace, and she, on the one hand, she works in the paediatric ward and she looks after all her young patients. She's an oncology nurse there. But then on the other hand, she has this past where she has to navigate her own, having seen her sister go through pediatric oncology. And these are things that have really remained unexamined for her. And so she sets off on a journey back home to try and remember what it was that they went through, and whether all her life choices are okay. And so in general, really, it's the lifelong effects of childhood trauma or illness on families, on siblings, on the people around the person who is generally unwell. I would say it's a novel about families and the way in which these families cope or get together, love, break over really difficult experiences, and ultimately how they recognize what they've been through.
I know. Okay, great description, because it is almost like you said before we started recording that, it's not like you don't write to entertain, you want to create real life and really reflect that. And I think that's what I found reading Skimming Stones was, I've immersed myself in these people's lives and these characters' lives, and they're so real, they're so three-dimensional. And I really felt what they were feeling. And it did feel like life. And life is not simple. Life is not all fun and games. Life is something that you really, what do I learn from it? And that's the thing. When I read books, I want to walk away and go, am I a better person for reading this book? And with Skimming Stones, I would quite happily say I'm a better person after reading it. So thank you. Thank you, Maria. Now, look, I've got to ask you, how did you get such detailed elements of the oncology ward? I mean, obviously, you're not a nurse yourself, or?
I'm not a nurse. I would never have touched this topic if I didn't have a lived experience myself, though. I saw my own child through pediatric oncology, leukemia. So she was very, very little at the time, and she had a young brother as well. So both of them probably will, as they grow, have not that much memory of their own experience. And when I was going through the ward as a mum, caring for my daughter, and as a mum caring for my son at home, I really wanted a story that could show me what I needed and could map the path for me ahead of time. Or I needed to find myself or my children inside a fiction. And what I was finding, I did find some good quality fiction that was set in oncology wards. But often what I found was this one narrative where the cancer or the illness was a disruption to a character's norm. Then the character either, hopefully, overcame it, and by the end they found purpose and meaning in what they had experienced, or they did not overcome it and it was this deep, sad tragedy. And neither narrative sat well with me as somebody who was seeing my child through such a difficult experience. I needed a little bit more nuance. I needed to feel like what I was going through was normal. And there was a part of me that wanted to, I've said this a few times now, I wanted to go 20, 30, 40, 50 years into the future, only to be able to look back and see that everything turned out okay. And that I could never find such a story. So then I wanted to write one 20, like, even if the only readers were my children, to give them their 20, 30, 40 years in the future and what happened, how did it shape them. So that was sort of the initial ideas of how and what I wanted to write. and why I wanted to write it and why it was so detailed. I didn't want to skirt any issues. I didn't want to pretend that what we were going through was simple, but I didn't want it to be gratuitous either. So I wanted it to be honest with some semblance of hope and some semblance of recognition for the reader in the end.
You actually, the original title of the book was I Belong to the Lake.
Yeah.
Why was it?
Well, my publisher didn't like it, and she said, this girl does not belong to the lake. Everything about her is, the lake is comforting her at a time, and then it's a place that she goes to, but it's also a place where great danger happens, and then she leaves it and then she comes back. But, ultimately she doesn't belong to the lake, so it can't be that. It's got to be something else. And then there was a piece, I think there was a little bit that I had written somewhere where I'd made like an analogy between life and the way life changes to a stone dropping at the bottom of the ocean, like a skimming stone dropping and moving the sand a little bit. And my publisher said, I like that one better. And I went, all right, because I was done with all the thinking by that stage. And
you get to that point, don't you?
I think yeah, I thought, you know better than me, so I'm going to trust you. And I'm thinking it's good. Yeah. We talked about it in class today. So all my students are doing book covers. And so I showed them mine and I said, look at this title, look at the alliteration. So, yeah.
And so did your students like the title and like the cover?
Well, they're very difficult to please. They said it's a really cool cover, but what's it about, miss? So they're doing autobiographies. So they've got all the pictures of themselves mountain biking and surfing on the front covers of their stories at the minute. Things. Yeah.
So why did I know you wrote Skimming Stones as part of a PhD? Why didn't you do a memoir? Why did you write fiction?
I found the fiction more freeing. I don't think that I started the PhD before my daughter was ill. So my initial idea was the way strangers come together during times of chaos, that like a connection or like a conversation between two people that just somehow makes sense and comforts another person. And that was my first idea. And I began that, and maybe about a year into it, my daughter fell ill and I had to stop. And then I tried to keep writing what I was writing before and it wasn't working. And I actually really wanted just to explore. I maybe used the PhD a little bit to explore what was happening with us, but I don't think that I was far enough away from it to be able to offer the kind of reflection that is required in a memoir. Okay. So it was much easier for me to create a fiction and to be able to watch what was unfolding for characters. So in a way, it was more healing for me to use fiction to make things up, to take things that maybe had an element of truth, but allow them to form some kind of substance on its own, and to allow me to observe just the same as any other audience member or reader could. I now think I'm probably far enough away to reflect, but I'm so tired by it, I don't want to. So I feel really lucky that I've chosen fiction. It was really suitable for me.
And I suppose in fiction you could say more than what you could do with a memoir, and be more playful with it and explore more avenues. So as you said, it was mostly healing. So did you have to change your whole thesis statement or question in order to accommodate? No,
not really, because the question ended up being, how can we represent the familiar made strange, the unrecognizable self, the stranger or the unknown in narratives of illness and trauma. And so so it was what it went from the way strangers come together in times of chaos to the way things become strange and how do we make sense of them during times of illness and trauma. So, and there's still some parts that in the novel were there right from the beginning.
Yeah, okay. So you would obviously an extreme amount of research went into your PhD and into the book. Did you find researching all this stuff and revisiting all that really hard?
I researched the way I've been taught to write is to have a question in mind and to answer that question through research and also through creativity. So then the way I've often written is I have an idea and I write in my journal and just explore it for a little bit, and then it prompts some kind of spark. Oh, I wonder whatever it is that I'm wondering, and then I'll go and find something out, and then it's like, oh, that's interesting, and then that'll come in to my writing, and then I'll have another question and I'll go back out into research, and so it's quite alternate. I didn't finish one and then start the other. One literally informed the questions that I asked in my research, and my research informed the things that went into my creative piece. So yeah, I think that's probably a way that I will continue to write in the future, even not in a uni sense. I've got ideas for another book at the moment, and I can actually see myself doing the same thing, but maybe not as academically driven.
Yeah. I'm glad you like research, because I find research completely and utterly boring. It's like, oh, do I have to research something that, oh my God.
No, I have so many questions. It's like, I wonder what, and then it leads to a question, and then it's, oh, that's really interesting.
Yep. So it's curiosity led, and then that goes you to a question that informs that. In the book, you've got a lot of conflict between the parents. So you got the main character, Grace. She's 12 or 13, but her parents just are at loggerheads for most of the book. Then, but which sort of reminded me of my childhood, with the parents just arguing constantly. But you've got two beautiful characters in the book, Harriet and Samuel, and they are like this island of calm interestingness, if that's a word, and Grace goes to find solace for them. Where do those characters come from?
They come from actually quite a lot of places and a lot of imagination. But I do hold my grandparents and my parents quite close when I write those two characters, and also my ex-father-in-law as well. So there's about 5 or 6 people that inform those characters, and none of them can see themselves in there.
Oh, like, really?
You know, yeah. And so like I might even say, Dad, do you see yourself in Samuel? And he's like, no. And did you see Grandma? No. So I guess they're very much their own people, their own characters at the minute. But I just and then the other thing is, I know that in WA at least, if a child is treated for cancer and they come from the country, then mum or one carer and the child stays in the city, and the rest of the family stays wherever they were. And so there is always a separation that happens. And in some cases, I remember stories of dads who did work fly in, fly out, and then the child is left with everybody else, you know, like everybody else has to pitch in and look after that young child. And I know certainly my family was in the city, but I know that there were times when my son didn't know who was going to collect him from school. It was always some sort of emergency, and ring up whoever can come, whichever parent of whatever friend can pitch in. And that feeling of not knowing who's going to collect you from school, I wanted to articulate in the book, and I could only articulate it through the kindness of strangers, through the fact that so many people pitch in, and that's why Harriet and Samuel are there.
And I just love the way you've drawn the characters, just absolutely I want to meet them. I want to spend time at their house and have a cup of tea with Harriet and go walking around taking photos with Samuel, you know?
There's quite a few people that are those two characters, which I guess makes me feel like I'm very lucky.
Yeah, no, definitely. Now, obviously, Greek heritage for yourself. Where were you born in Greece or born in Australia?
No, so I was born in Bunbury, Western Australia, and but my parents were both born in Greece at different. They arrived in Australia at different times. So my dad was quite young, and he went to most of his schooling in Australia, and my mum came when she was 19. I think she had a 20th birthday here, and then they met here. But a lot of their stories about how they ended up in Australia and what life was like, and their parents' stories to do with war have shaped my not my worldview, but my way of telling a story. And I can see it when I hear my parents, and when I remember my grandparents, when they talk, you know, like they often talk in metaphors and similes. And so I can actually hear that I learned how to write a story from them. And that's something that I want to explore more, because growing up here in regional, I haven't really had a chance to explore what does it mean for me to be Greek. I don't know.
Yeah, I was going to say, do you identify as that, or you?
I do, and absolutely. It's something very close to me. But when you grow up second generation, there's a lot that you miss. So it was my first language. I didn't speak English until I was in primary school, and I find it odd and ironic that I ended up with a PhD in English and I can't write in Greek, you know. So that's something that I'd like to shift a little bit, you know.
Barring COVID and all that sort of stuff, do you go back to Greece often?
My parents have taken me when I was 3 and when I was 13, and I would love to go. I'd love to take my children, but COVID is an issue. And before COVID was an issue, me learning who I was and what I needed to do with my life was an issue. So I was studying a lot. So now that I can't. So maybe sometime soon I'll be able to.
Yeah, look, I haven't traveled much, but I did go to a Greek island. I went to Skopelos and spent 2 weeks writing a book on the island in the off season. So there was no tourists around. And you got to meet the locals, you got to spend time with them, and they all go, what are you doing here in winter? Okay, well, it's 40 degrees back over in WA at the moment, and it's beautiful 20 here, sun shining. And I just fell in love with the place. It's just suddenly there was this amazing connection with the people, with the lifestyle, with everything about it. And it's like, why can't I be Greek and have a good excuse to go back all the time, you know, and go live in the village or something like that? That's just like, it's not fair sometimes.
I suspect, though, that people romanticize it a little bit.
I did, yeah.
I maybe, I don't know.
I suppose the thing is like when you go back, you know, as you said, the last time you were 13, but to go back as an adult and take your kids will be quite an interesting experience.
I'm quite scared of it, to be honest, because like I said, I find it hard to write. It takes me a long time to read. I'd be a very different person over there than I am now. Very confident in my space here, and just would feel very. And then all these expectations that you have, maybe they're not quite there. I don't know. So there are lots of things.
Maybe that's why the journey needs to be taken at one point. Maybe that unknown.
But I am currently researching like a story that I want to set in Greece, between Greece and Australia.
Oh, well, you've got to go, because then you can claim it on tax.
Yeah. I might be able to now that I've published a book. Like,
well, you can. As soon as you publish something, you can claim tax. You can claim everything as an expense. So go for it. Rack it up on, take it to accountant. Here's my airfares. Here's my food. Here's the, anyway. That's one of the joys of being a writer, Maria. And a published author. So, okay. Now you mentioned before that you're working on a project as well. So how close are you to finishing a manuscript for anything too?
No, I'm absolutely at the beginning. I had a really wonderful teacher many years ago who said that you can't write unless you've got something that concerns you, a problem to solve, or something that that drives you. And so for a long time, Skimming Stones was what was driving me. And then after that, teaching and learning, because I taught at uni and then I retrained to teach in the secondary sector. So that was what was driving me. And then I heard some stories that my family was telling, and I wanted to know more. And suddenly I was finding myself driven by these family stories. And I had another teacher who said, your best writing happens when you're observing and writing a journal before you write on screen. And so currently I'm in a journal writing. I went to the store, I bought a blue journal. I call it my Greek book. It's stereotypically blue.
Excellent.
And I've just been filling it with stories, research, questions, curiosity, small things like, Mum, what were the wildflowers in your village at this time of the year? And just listening. So at the moment I'm listening and researching, and I have a sense of what I want to write, but I haven't popped anything down. I'm not plotting. I haven't got any characters. I'm just exploring. Yeah.
Just letting it sort of mull over and just taking notes and all that. Whatever. And so this is what I find is one of the joys of being a writer. It allows you license to do all these weird and wonderful things and just think and write and take notes, mull over, ask questions, be curious.
Yeah.
I don't think there's many professions where you can get away with just sitting around and daydreaming and just asking annoying questions to people,
It's the best part of writing, to be honest. So I'm trying to savor it as long as possible. But I do feel quite excited about where that might head.
No, fantastic. So have you got a full itinerary of events and stuff coming up?
It keeps coming, but it's okay because it's all going to match with school holidays. So
perfect.
So there's a bit of a break and a few things. I think I'm going to be at I can't say where I'm going to be.
No one's watching. It's all right.
No, I'm not allowed to say all the different places I'm going to be, but there's a few different things. Okay,
fantastic. Now, Maria, I always ask this question of people: what lights you up?
My kids light me up. They're teenagers now, so they don't think they do, but they actually do. And the same when I am teaching all the young people and they figure out how to write their stories and they get confidence in what they're doing, that lights me up too.
Yeah, I like that. It's about getting people to find their own story and the confidence to write that. So that's great. I love that. Look, Maria, Skimming Stones out now through Fremantle Press and all good bookshops right around Australia. Do yourself a favour. You'll love it. Thank you, Maria, for your time. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.